right-hand section. And if you download the latest version of Zoom, there will actually be more reactions available. And then in the middle section, you'll find the chat feature. And right here, I just popped it out, and you can see you have the option of chatting everyone sometimes if that function is available, or sometimes you'll have only the option to chat the host as it is with this presentation. And then I also wanted to bring your attention to UCSB's Zoom section. So if you want to download the latest version of Zoom, you can do so by Googling UCSB Zoom, and it's the first link that will pop up. And then here, if you're having any sort of trouble with your Zoom account, you can also request to speak to an IT at UCSB or kind of get into contact with them, and then they should be able to help you with anything if you're having any difficulties. Okay, so now I'm going to begin talking about the quarter system, and it was really important to me to kind of put together this part of the presentation. The quarter system can be a very new experience in addition to transitioning into undergrad. It's kind of its own beast in and of itself. A lot of times folks are coming in from semester system in high school or in community college, and it definitely took me quite a bit of time to get used to the quarter system, and now we're all navigating trying to do a quarter system online, which is a new struggle in and of itself. So I really encourage all of you to have some leniency with yourselves as we enter this new school year and this new quarter. Navigating college is very difficult, or it can be difficult and overwhelming, and doing it online is a different experience. So I really encourage you to kind of have some leniency with yourself and let yourself ask for resources and ask for help. And yes, so I don't know why I'm having trouble with that, but so what does a quarter look like? And I think that the quarter can be divided into three main topics. So there's the academic aspect of the quarter, the social aspect of the quarter, and then what I would consider the adulting side of the quarter. And so the academic part, it looks like having 3 or 4 classes, maybe more, maybe less, maybe having a part-time job, participating in internships, attending meetings, workshops and events offered by campus, maybe volunteering. Of course, this will look slightly different through remote. And then there's the social aspect. So campus org involvement, social time, like making friends, and also making time for your family, calling your parents or FaceTiming any siblings. And then there's the adulting side of it. It's the finances, nourishment, eating, hygiene, taking care of yourself, and that includes self-care. And I say this because this is not something that I really realized when I was entering college. I thought that I would have the fun time now that I was alone, but it means navigating different things. And so some of you may be at home, some of you may be in the community, but whatever that looks like for you, it does entail kind of a lot of things, At home, you get to have help taking care of yourself through your parents or family or guardians. But here, as you enter college, it really is the first introduction to adult life. And what does that look like? Taking care of school, but also trying to get that social aspect, but also the adulting side of being able to take care of yourself and kind of navigating all of that together. And so as far as the technicalities of the quarter goes, so there's 10 weeks, and then there's a finals week. So during the first 10 weeks, you attend weekly lectures and sections. That may look sort of different now that we're online. There's 2 options to this that professors tend to choose. It can be online and have weekly scheduled Zoom times, and that's known as synchronous learning, or there can be asynchronous learning, which involves a professor kind of uploading lectures, recorded lectures or PowerPoints at a certain time of the week, and then they let you navigate that whatever time works best for you. Professors choose what works best for them and for the style of the course, and professors will let you know what they choose and sort of explain all of that. And so a part of this, you'll have midterms all throughout the quarter. So sometimes midterm can come as early as week 3. Sometimes it can happen in week 5, as late as week 7 or 9. It really depends the way the professor decides to lay out the quarter. And then week 10 on campus is known as dead week, and it's known as that because it's the week before finals. So while we still have classes during this time, this tends to be the time where everyone's the most busiest studying and preparing for finals. And you'll find that if we're in person for instructions, a lot of centers are open. There's a lot more resources, like late night studying and such. And you also find it harder to find a space in the library to study. And so after those first 10 weeks comes week 11, also known as finals week. And during this time, you're not expected to attend lectures or sections. And finals are at a designated time. And professors will let you know what time they choose. Sometimes it's also noted on gold, but sometimes the professor decides to change that, and it's at their discretion as well. And so when we're in person, that can start as early as 8 in the morning and end as late as 8 in the night. And again, it just depends on what works for the professor and the course. So the quarter system can be very fast-paced. It moves very quickly, especially at the beginning when you're trying to get used to it. I know that I find myself sometimes in week 5 or 6, and then I forget that I'm in week 5 or 6. It's kind of hard to keep track of the numbers. And it does require, consistent dedication and commitment. It's quite easy to fall behind because it just moves so quickly, and there's some, midterms can start as early as week 3. But on the other side of that, I think that some of the benefits of it is it allows you to take a variety of classes because you can take as many as 3 or 4. You kind of cycle through them quickly, so you get to experience a lot of different classes that UCSB has to offer, which there are so many and so many interesting ones. So it's beneficial in that aspect. And it also, similarly, if there's a class that you don't necessarily like, it'll go by quickly. You'll find yourself, you only have to stay in it for 10 weeks. So that's also another benefit of it. And so I also wanted to provide some relevant remote learning websites. And there's plenty of websites, but 2 that I want to draw your attention to are the Keep Learning website, and this is the first one. And so here on this website, you'll be able to find sort of resources and updated information on which campus centers are offering online support. So I really recommend you take the time to navigate this. This is just a screenshot of it, but they have resources for academic advising, resources for the Disabled Students Program, for CLAS, which is indicated right here. There's even some videos on time management and other resources. And I think this would be a good place to start if you're wondering what sort of resources you have available to you, even at home. And they also, I believe, list some of the community resources if you're more local as well. So this is sort of the more academic aspect. And I also wanted to bring your attention to Shoreline. So if there's any students, you still want to get that social aspect of college, which I think is a really big component of college, I would recommend you trying to navigate the Shoreline. Shoreline is a new system, and it's being brought forth by the office previously known as the Office of Student Life. Now they're known as CO, and I forget their acronym, but so on here, they have the majority of campus orgs on here, and as you can see, I think we have over 500, and you can filter them by the type that they are, so fraternities, sororities, department ones, like academic ones, grad school ones, and I would really recommend taking a look at that. A lot of campus orgs are transitioning into online, so they're having meetings and stuff. So if you want to get to know other folks, other students from campus, and kind of also something that you're interested in, I really recommend doing that as well. And so now I kind of want to go into the tips of organizing your quarter. I think that in my experience, one of the biggest differences in being successful is kind of organizing yourself and time management. there's a lot, like I said, there's so many things going on at college and undergrad in terms of social life and home life and adulting. So I think it's really important to kind of organize yourself. And I will say that it does take some time to get used to it. So have leniency with yourself. It's definitely taken me a few quarters to kind of understand what works best for me. And something that might work for me might not work for you. So I definitely think that it takes some trial and error and kind of working around and learning to try new things and always being open to trying new things and using the resources that are available around you. So something that really works for me is using a planner, but I particularly use a Google Calendar. I don't like writing things down. I find it that I can lose my notebooks really quickly. So a Google Calendar is beneficial to me because it's available on my phone, on my iPad, on my laptop. Anywhere I go, I just need to log in and I'll be able to see there what my schedule looks like. And I personally have a quarter schedule, a monthly schedule, and then a weekly schedule, which may seem excessive, but I like to stay organized, especially also because of all the campus involvements that I have. It's just so easy to like forget a meeting and stuff. And actually another big reason why I like a Google Calendar is because it reminds you 10 minutes before you have a lecture or a section. And I know that it saved me a few times. I was in the library once and I forgot that I had lecture, and then I got a 10-minute reminder, and I got to class. So that's what counts. So for me personally, I tend to just schedule the big things. So I'll schedule lectures, meetings, and any working hours I have. You'll see here on this slide that it recommends doing study blocks, grocery shoppings, and workshops, and kind of blocking that. And so that may work for some students, but that doesn't work for me. That can feel very overwhelming. And I prefer just to have anything written that I have to do, because I know that those are like required commitments, and it's easier on my eyes. But I do color code. That's really important because then with everything going on, I need to know how to differentiate things. Also kind of looks prettier. So I color coordinate. And I also use sticky notes. So sometimes I'll get like random thoughts and I like to write it down, and it helps me keep organized. And I tend to keep the sticky notes right by my desk. Something that I will recommend for everyone now that we're doing remote instruction is to have a structure and stick to it. I found that in these past 2 quarters that I've done remotely, the one being summer and the other being spring, is that having structure is really helpful, or else I'll get off track or I'll push things off. I'll tend to procrastinate. And it's easier to do that when we're farther away from campus, where there's no like structure to like day and night. So I really recommend doing that. And it's helped me a lot to kind of navigate remote learning. Something that I also really do is to-do lists, and that just helps me. I like the satisfaction of being able to cross things off my list. And this is the one time that I will actually write things down. And it's nice to be able to like move things to the next day and stuff like that. And so a final point to this one is also to make it fun and try out different things. Like I said previously, something that works for me may not work for you. And it kind of takes time to figure out what works best for you. And, as you navigate these next few quarters, have fun with it. First year as an undergrad or first year as a transfer is kind of a fun time to kind of get used to the system, get used to taking classes at this pace and things like that. So this is actually an example of my Google Calendars, and this is an example of it during remote learning. So as you'll see here, I've color-coded yellow the times where I work for the ONDAS Student Center. Everything in like this like magenta color is study blocks. So during spring quarter, none of my classes were live through Zoom. All of them were pre-recorded. So it was pretty easy to kind of get sidetracked if I wanted to, since I didn't have the discipline of attending lecture at a certain time every single week. So in order to combat that, I made study blocks on my calendar. Anything in that like funny gray color is meetings. And then anything in that light purple color is things I had to attend live. So I did actually have 2 sections that were live, and then I had another GRE prep course that was live. And so this is what it looks like for remote learning. And I also want to highlight that at the top, I also keep track of what week it is. And this has worked wonders for me because my first year, I remember being shocked that it was week 9. And so this is something that's really helped me kind of keep track of what week we're on and things like that. So it helps count down as we get to finals week. And so this is a sample of what it would look like in person, and it's actually very similar. So all my lectures are in burgundy, and then all the times I would work for the ONDAS Student Center would be in yellow. I also worked the other campus job, and that was like the light pink color. All my lab hours were in that light purple color as well. So that's what it would look like, very similar. And so another thing that I do, which took me time to refine sort of, but I really, really recommend you try it out. So one of the most important parts of navigating any course would be the syllabus. In high school, I recall that some of my teachers would use it, but I think that it's very different in college, and I feel that it carries a lot more weight to it. In the syllabus, you'll find all the information you need I think to be successful in the course. It can be very overwhelming sometimes. Professors have syllabuses that are 10, 13 pages long with a lot of resources, a lot of deadlines and dates and such. So something that I like to do is I do the syllabus sticky note method. That's what I've called it. Maybe I'll change the name, kind of a mouthful there. But the most important information, I think, from a syllabus to extract would be the instructor's name, the contact information, office hours, the grade breakdown, and any assignments they have to turn in. So this is what it looks like here. So this is for a course I took in spring quarter. I believe it was Intro to Helping Skills. And so I think it's really important to have the email there ready and available for you. If you have a question and you want to contact the professor, you don't have to look through all your syllabuses, all your downloads. You'll be able to find it here easily. And then you also have the office hours. So the majority of professors and TAs will still be continuing office hours, even if it's online. When you're in person, it will be in different buildings and different room numbers. So typically when we're in person, I'll also write that information down. And then also the grade breakdown, which I think that is the most helpful. So you'll see here that I wrote down every assignment that I would have to turn in for the course and its deadline. So week 3, week 6, week 11, Monday mornings, and then the participation. I also included what percentage breakdown that was. And the reason this is helpful is that I know when the major assignments will be due at a quick glance, but also it tells me what weight they hold. So for example, if I turn in helping paper number 1 and I get a less than favorable score, I can look at this and know that I have 2 other papers to turn in and they're weighted the same way. So there's a possibility for me to balance that out. And I also know the other components that make up my grade. So the weekly quizzes, it may seem like something small in comparison to a paper, but they make up 35% of that grade. And so that's quite a chunk. And so I know that when I'm taking the quizzes, take them seriously, as it'll eventually add up to 35% of my grade. And so I'll do this at the beginning of the quarter. I'll go through all my syllabi and extract this information, and I'll put it down in a sticky note. And then I'll screenshot that. And so that's really helpful. If I'm studying and I'm writing the paper and I'm like, oh, I'm really tired, I don't want to, how much severity should I put into working on this paper? And I see it's 15%. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll keep that in the back of my mind as I finish writing this paper. And I think it's also helpful to navigate this. Sometimes it's easy to confuse deadlines across different classes, especially if they're major ones. So I'm taking like 3 comm classes. It's going to be like really easy to confuse them. So I think it's really helpful to have all of this information centralized And it may be helpful to go back and look into your syllabuses. There's other like resources there as well. But this is kind of a quick snapshot that really works for me. So I would encourage you to try it out, and perhaps it'll work for you too. And so now I'll get into some time management tips. So day-to-day planning, I think that it helps me sometimes in some quarters and sometimes it doesn't. Some quarters I'll find myself to have more assignments, more deadlines in comparison to others. So sometimes that can help me. So if I'm planning day-to-day, what I would do would be on a sheet of paper, write down like the 2 or 3 things that I want to get done today. And so sometimes that includes schoolwork, but sometimes that also includes some other things like go grocery shopping today or clean the bathroom today, and things like that. So I think it's good to have a work-life balance. And sometimes my day-to-day includes, like FaceTiming a friend, or when we're in person, going out to lunch with my friend. And that's also really important. I think that it's really nice to have a good balance of these sorts of things. Another thing that I have not necessarily gotten a hold of yet is to learn to say no to things. Sometimes we don't have time for things, no matter how much we want to help a friend study, or we want to take on an additional responsibility on a campus org, or maybe even take on another job. We really have to learn to say no and prioritize the things that are most important to us. I know academics is something that I will always have centered and focused on. And in my head, I kind of have a list of my priorities in terms of like academic, at least. So I'll have, because I am involved in a variety of things, there's certain things that take more weight and more importance to me. And I think it's really important to navigate that and kind of set that for yourself to help you create boundaries of what you want to commit your time to and what you don't want to necessarily commit your time to. It's really important where we invest our time. I feel like undergrad went by so quickly, and being able to say no to things was really important early on because I still got to have the social experience for me. And that was really important and arguably really helpful to my academic sides of things. And so another tip would be to break up your tasks. So if you have this really big, massive final paper that's 10 pages due at the end of the quarter, you know when that deadline is due, and professors tend to have a rough outline of that pretty early on in the quarter. I would really recommend that you break it up, because if you wait until the last few weeks to get all of that done, it can be very overwhelming. So something that I like to do, especially in a quarter that I have to write a lot of final papers in, I would break it up. So I would first do an outline, and then after that, I would probably get all my sources together if it's a research paper. And then after that, I would do a rough draft and kind of work my way backwards like that. I know I have in the past, in full transparency, waited until the last moment to get a paper done, and then it's really overwhelming and stressful, and I really regret it every single time. I really could have had it started sooner, and that really would have helped. Even having an outline would have helped. So I really recommend breaking up bigger tasks and kind of getting them done as we move on through the weeks. And I also think that it just leads to a better product at the end. And something that also is relevant for me, so it might be relevant for you, is this idea of being a perfectionist. I know that I like to put in my best into all the work that I do. And that's a good thing, but sometimes it can also lead to being very time consuming. Trying to get it perfect can take a lot of time. So I would really recommend just starting it off first and doing it once and coming back to it later if you have more time to get the task done, because you want to make sure that you're getting everything done first instead of focusing all your time and energy into one assignment or one task and trying to get it right the first, perfect. As we move along, you kind of learn what sort of where the line is between being a perfectionist and kind of procrastinating and saying, oh, well, I'm still trying to perfect this task instead of moving on. And so now I wanted to share some general tips from me to you. And I say this with all the experience I have had. I say that as if I'm old. I'm not really. It took me a really long time to learn the quarter system, and I I always like to say this in full transparency because it's true and it's my experience. The first quarter I had at UCSB was really hard for me. I tried to take a course that I wasn't really comfortable doing, but I was like, no, I can do it. I'm motivated. And unfortunately, I didn't do well. I didn't end up passing that class. And that was a huge blow for me because I was so used to doing really well in high school. And I never thought that I would like fail class, and not to mention right off the bat. And it really takes some time to navigate the campus, resources, time, and everything. So, even though now I have had somewhat of success in navigating my classes and being involved in time management, it definitely wasn't always like this. And I want to make that very clear because when I was a first year, I would look up to upperclassmen and be like, oh my God, they have their life together and they're doing so well and they've had so many experiences. Like, why am I having a harder time? And, that wasn't my experience. I never thought that I would get to where I am today in terms of all of these things. So definitely take some time. And I really encourage all of you to practice self-care and kind of being forgiving with yourself. And I feel like it's oftentimes very easy to be forgiving to other people, but not necessarily with yourself. And even self-care now is something that I struggle with. It's so easy to become school, and like nothing else, and like forget that, we're people too, and it's okay to take a break. It's okay to say, you know what, I'm done with homework for today. I've done a lot. I think I need a break, end early. And I think that it's a skill that is needed for life and not just for undergrad, sort of being able to know when to say no, like I said before. And, and self-care looks different for everyone. There's like the physical kind of going on a run, going for a walk, going for a bike ride. There's the more social kind. I know some people need like social interaction, so texting your friends or FaceTiming. And then also things that you just practice on your own, so crafts. I know that's something that I really like to do. And I set the routine up very early on. Every Friday, I would eat Blaze Pizza, which we have locally in IV, and I would watch Grey's Anatomy because I loved Grey's Anatomy then. And that was super helpful to me because there was that one day where I wouldn't, and I always do it by myself because I wanted to. I would never really invite everyone, and everyone knew that if I was gone for like 2 or 3 hours, that's what I was doing on a Friday. And it helped me look forward to something throughout the week. And it was just really nice to kind of treat myself to something and kind of take a break from school, which is needed always. And so another big tip that I have for you is to get comfortable using campus resources. I am very proud of UCSB for all the things that it has to offer to students. And I think that coming in as a first generation college student, it can be hard to know to ask for help and where to ask for help. It can be very overwhelming. So I really recommend you reach out to people and to centers. And everyone I have met here has always been very helpful and always wanting to help and always wanting to provide resources to these students. I'm sort of biased because I work for the ONDAS Student Center, but I found that our peer mentors and our professional staff are very caring people. And if you have any questions or if you need help to resources, connecting yourself to resources, it's always nice to start off at one point and kind of move your way outwards like that. Just to name a few, there's the career services, academic advising, EOP, CAPS, which is the counseling and psychological services. And all of these centers pretty much are available remotely as well. And, we're paying into these services through our student fees. So I would really, really recommend you taking advantage of all of them. I know first year I really didn't take advantage of any. And then as I got more comfortable with myself, the space of UCSB, the campus, I was really able to take advantage of these resources. And they have so much help to give you. So another thing that I would really recommend is to get involved. I am a person that, I really appreciate academics. I really love to learn and like class and all those sorts of things. But a really big, I think, difference between me really enjoying and feeling comfortable on campus or as a UCSB student was in my involvement. First year, I was kind of shy. I didn't really have that many friends. I was scared to kind of put myself out there, and that really changed second year as I became involved in the ONDAS Student Center, and then eventually I did volunteer, and then I got connected to research assisting, and now and through all the work I've done, I think overall my favorite part about being at UCSB is all the involvement opportunities. There's just so much to get involved in, and also in what you're interested in. I know I'm not a very athletic person, so I didn't get involved in like the intramural sports or anything. But if that's what you like, then I really recommend you trying it out. It can sort of look different now that we're remote, but there's still resources available, and you can also like learn what it would look like in person, eventually if we get to in person as well. And another big component about getting involved is that you just meet incredible people. I'm involved in a multicultural sorority, and that was really important to me. And although I never thought that I would do so, join a sorority that is, it was really important to me because I got to be in a community of people that I felt shared a similar identity to me, and that were navigating the same struggles as a person of color on campus, as a first generation student on campus, or as a student with a low income background, such as myself. And you know, I really love UCSB. Again, I can be biased because like, you know, but I'm so proud of it. Its resources, the people that I have met here, it's been an incredible experience, and I'm excited for all of you to get to have this undergrad experience and hopefully be able to come onto campus and enjoy all the beautiful aspects of it, the beach, the grass. I think the grass is really pretty, and you know, the people as well. And I believe that's the end of my presentation. So I'll be taking questions now. And feel free to ask me about anything on the slides, anything about my experience. I can be a very talkative person, and I genuinely really love to help students navigate the campus. I had a lot of support, and I would love to give that support back to any of y'all. So if you have any questions, or if Lori and Malapon want to share if any were mentioned in the chat.
Okay, hi. So some students questioned in the chat. It was about final dates. So what should a student do if a final date interferes with another final?
So typically, it's recommended that you don't sign up for courses that conflict in terms of final times. When we're remote, it will sort of look different because everything will be remote. So some professors have leaned to having a final paper instead of like an exam. But if there are two courses that you absolutely really have to take, then I would recommend communicating that with your professors. But again, they may just encourage you to take the course at another quarter.
I have another question. I think this one's meant towards you, Jackie. It's how did you manage Greek life and classes?
That's a really important one because actually Greek life can be very consuming. You know, it was a really fun aspect for me, being involved in Greek life, but it can be very overwhelming because there's a lot of positions to take on, and not to mention like the social aspect of it, of you know, being with like friends or sisters as I call them. So I really recommend, I think this is a really important place of where setting boundaries is important in terms of where I want to put my time. I'm president of the sorority now, so there's definitely a lot more responsibilities, and I do take the role very seriously, but I always remind myself that academics is most important, and my sorority sisters understand that, and we always encourage that as well. We're here for school and to be successful in school, and I also have other commitments. I do research. I'm going to be applying to grad school this fall, and so I would really encourage anyone who wants to get involved in Greek life, which I really recommend, you know, to set priorities for yourself and set boundaries for yourself and know what's most important for you. And of course, the time management aspects as well of don't bite off more than you can chew, and but really have fun with it. I've had a really great experience, and it's not for everyone. It's not something that I ever thought I would do, but I really enjoyed my experience, and having the support system has been tremendous for me. Also because I'm shy at making friends. Like I met incredible women who have had a really big impact on my life.
I have a follow-up question from a student. If they are interested in a sorority, how would they be able to get into one and be able to know which sorority to pick?
The Greek life, if you will, is sort of divided into two aspects. There's the Pan-Hellenic sororities, which admittedly I don't know very much about, and then there's the multicultural sororities and fraternities. And so the two processes look different, and I'll speak on the multicultural aspect since this is where I have my experience in. If you're interested in a multicultural sorority or fraternity, I recommend following the USFC Council on Instagram, and there they have information on it. Then they list all the sororities and fraternities on in their council, and there's quite a lot of sororities here on campus. And how the process works is that a lot of sororities during this time are having different events through Zoom to get to know the members. And so I would recommend kind of trying out a few, going to a few different events, and seeing kind of the vibe that you get from different orgs, and seeing which one is a better fit for you. And then you could continue on the process that way. So it's different from the Pan-Hellenic ones, who you meet everyone and they choose you. Multicultural sororities and fraternities, you meet everyone and you choose which one that you want to participate in and be a member of.
I have a couple questions in the chat, if you don't mind me reading. It says, thank you for the great presentation. My question is, where can we access the classes that we signed up for? Sorry for the background. I have not been emailed any Zoom links yet.
So one of the biggest platforms that UCSB uses is Ucsb. If you Google UCSB Ucsb, you'll be able to find it there. Their classes typically are listed, and professors will upload syllabus or syllabi and like deadlines and stuff, and sometimes that's where you submit your work. You'll find that as you start new quarters, different professors will email you at different times. So I'm taking, I think, 3 classes this quarter, and I've been emailed by 2 professors, but I haven't been emailed by 1 yet. So professors move at different paces. So soon, but every professor emails. So you should eventually get an email with more information about the course. Sometimes professors take until the day of that your course is supposed to meet to email you the day before. And so you'll be able to find any information if your professor has uploaded it yet onto Ucsb. And you'll become familiar with Ucsb relatively quickly, as most professors' courses use this universally.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm at a loss for words.
It's okay.
So do professors only use Ucsb to turn in all of the assignments, or are there other ways to submit work?
There's other ways to submit work. It really just depends on the professor and how they choose to navigate the course. Some professors have websites that they use and they prefer that. Some professors, it depends if the course is smaller, will have you email the TA your completed assignment instead. When we're in person, it's kind of a funny thing. They'll have you turn it into a mailbox at a certain office that they have. I've had that experience for some of my comm classes. So you would have to physically go into the building, and like there's little mailbox chutes that you put it in. But obviously because we're remote, it won't be like that. Sometimes professors will have you bring in a physical copy of a paper into lecture, and then you'll stack them up in the front of the hall. So each professor, though, will make it very clear on how they choose to navigate the course and where assignments will be submitted.
That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Karina, I think we were having a little bit of trouble with your sound. If you could type your question into the chat, we can read it out loud. In the meanwhile, I have another question. Is there a difference with the credit requirements with the semester system and a quarter system?
It's sort of different in that the units move differently. So both of my siblings are on semester system, and they always think it's funny that I'm taking less classes than they are. So that's how it works. So typically classes will be valued at the amount of time it takes to participate in the class, which would be typically 4 units. There are some courses that will go up to 5 units and some as low as 2. It just depends on the commitment of it. So we do have in person, we have like exercising courses, and those like are like half a unit sometimes. But typically, because courses are 4 units, folks will take anywhere from 3 to 4 classes a quarter. And so I know that for financial aid purposes, we're required to complete 36 units per school year. So there's that restraint, but you also want to be mindful of the overall like university unit requirements to graduate. But if you need any help with that, I really recommend going to academic advising, who are incredible people, very helpful to sort of navigate the timeline and stuff.
So I have a question. Now that we're on the topic of like units, I have a class that's 5 units. Should I like be intimidated, or should I like expect to prioritize that one over the ones that are less units?
Sometimes it depends. If it's a pre-major course, I always recommend to have place a lot of importance in those courses as opposed to GEs, because some majors will have restrictions, like you have to have a certain GPA or grade in order to get into the major. With pre-major classes, I know that I took a GE, for example, and the reason it was 5 units was because we had like a 3-hour lecture on Mondays to watch movies. It was a really good class. I don't recall what it was called. So I wouldn't say that it was more in terms of work-wise. It was just more in terms of time-wise, because we had to have that specific lecture to watch that movie. So it would really depend. But typically 5 units courses are measured by time-wise. So I would just be mindful of it. I think that being mindful of how much work you're going to have for the quarter is very helpful, and being aware of it. But I wouldn't be scared or intimidated by it, because then it can be easy to psych yourself out that way. Yeah.
So just really quickly, so if it's a foreign language class, so it makes sense that it would be more based on like work, I feel like, rather than time.
Actually, I believe that almost all the foreign language courses tend to be 5 units, and that's because time-wise and in person, almost all the foreign language courses meet 3 times a week, or 4 or 5. So that one is time-wise, I believe. I completed the foreign language requirement before I entered UCSB, so I never took any of those courses, but I've had friends who have, and those met several times throughout the week. So that's one of the reasons why it would be 5 units.
Yeah, we meet 3 times a week, so that makes sense. Thank you.
Jackie, I have a lot of questions in regards to textbooks and where to find them, how to purchase them, and when will the professors like let you know what textbooks you need.
Okay, so typically you'll find what textbook you need inside the syllabus. So that's why the syllabus or syllabi is one of the most important tools for the course. So professors will list there when or what textbooks you need, if any. Some professors will say, you don't need to buy a textbook, I will post all the readings. But some will require you to buy them. And so you can buy them new or used through the UCSB's bookstore. And I believe that they're mailing out books. So if you order, you can get them mailed to your home. And I believe that's free of charge as well. Another alternative to that would be Amazon or Chegg. which is popular if you want to get it used in order to save money. Another really cool resource that's kind of, I feel like, a hidden secret, which would be more relevant if we were in person, but some professors will put the textbooks on reserve, as they say. And so what that means is that they'll place a few copies in the library, and you have the opportunity to go into the library and check out the book for 2 hours. And that way you don't have to buy the book. I know that's something that I really, really use. I have bought, like, if any, like 2 or 3 textbooks throughout my time here, because a lot of professors will do that. It is harder now that we're remote, unfortunately, so I think I will have to buy a few textbooks this quarter, but that's a really helpful tool if it's not in the budget or if it's a very expensive book. And so something that also a lot of students do is that we have scanners. So for example, if your professor is not using the entire book, sometimes they just use chapters or a few pages, you can go in and scan a few pages in the library and then, or scan the pages for the week. That way you have that available outside. And when you do borrow the textbook, you have 2 hours with the textbook. You can use it in the library, you can like take it home or to your dorm or such, but you have to return it for, after 2 hours.
Nice. And if your professors haven't like notified you yet, I would just wait until they send you an email on the syllabus. Some professors update their syllabuses really early and some of them don't. So I would just be patient. That was just like another tip.
There is a question about the difference between lectures and discussion sections.
Okay, so lectures will typically be taught by professors and will also have a larger amount of students. So during the lecture, the professor typically just goes over the topic for the course. Sometimes they'll invite students to ask questions. Sometimes there'll be discussions, but most of the times those discussions are encouraged to take place during your section time. Sections are led by TAs. So they're grad students typically, and we'll have a smaller number of students, anywhere from 15 to 20, 25 students. It just depends on the course. And during this time, there will be like smaller group discussions. Sometimes assignments will take place during this time, but it really gives you an opportunity to allow for discussion and ask your TA questions about the course if you have any questions.
And then I also put into the chat a page from the First Gen website that has some UCSB lingo or common terms, and lectures and discussions and teaching assistants, TAs are all part of that page as well. I have another question. Do you have any tips for dealing with imposter syndrome?
I feel like this is a really good question and something that I still struggle with. It's so easy to get discouraged and feel like you don't belong. I think that was really common for me first year because I did do poorly my first quarter. I was like, oh, do I really belong here? Will I do well? Like if I did poorly at first, like, will I do poorly in the future? And so I think that as a first generation college student, and in my identity as a person of color, coming from a low income background, it's something that we have to continually, work through and sort of navigate. And something that really helps me is surrounding myself by a community of people who continually remind me of, my success and accomplishments, but also reminding myself that, if I do have a setback, that doesn't mean I don't belong. I'm allowed to struggle. I'm allowed to, have some challenges and still be worthy of a student and still be worthy of UCSB, still have value as a person. And I think that that's something that takes time to really like navigate and sort of having, I think that we're our biggest critics. I know I am always like, oh, I could have done this better, or I could have done that better, or things like that. But I always encourage you to I think that's something that's helped me immensely, is surrounding myself by people around people who constantly remind me and support me that I've done a lot of work and that I've, if I am successful, it's because I've put in the work. So that's something that helps me.
There's another question in the chat. It's, how do we get in touch with students in our classes to create study groups / friends, especially if lectures are large?
So I guess there's different ways of navigating this. Some professors, now that we're online, have on their Gaucho-based encouraged like discussion forums. So you can meet students that way. Sometimes through sections. I would also put link in like the Zoom chat if it's available. Like I'm interested in joining a study group. Let me know if you're interested. I feel like that's easier to do in a section than it would a lecture because there's tons of folks there. If your Zooms aren't live, I know that the UCSB community is very strong. And during spring quarter, there was a few group meets going around about specific courses. So some students will I create a group meet. I know there's a few group meets going around because they happen informally. You kind of just find them on the UCSB Facebook pages. So there's UCSB Free and for Sale. And if you're not a member of that, I really recommend it. So, students will sell used textbooks, furniture, things like that. And so that's a good place to find kind of news because sometimes students will also put like relevant things on there. So like, a group meet starting, if any of the, like if you're interested in joining for a course. So I think that that's helped me.
I have a question about number of courses that students should take in their first quarter. So would you recommend a student take 4 courses during their first quarter at UCSB?
I think that it's sort of subjective. So if Lori or Malapon wants to also add on, but in my perspective, I think that it's best to start off with a smaller number, so just 12 units, so you can get used to the quarter system and the courses and navigating that. There is a difference between high school and undergrad, and the kind of time and work it takes. So I would really recommend taking 12 just so you can get used to it. And there will be plenty of time to take 4 courses, 5 courses, even if you want. There's definitely room to take more units later in the future and down the line. But I think 12 would be a solid start. It's more than enough.
Yes, I 100% agree with that, Jackie. I think that's a great recommendation for incoming students who are not quite used to the quarter system, because as Jackie mentioned in her presentation, it goes by so quickly and you're still adjusting to a variety of things. And you really don't need to take more than 12 units your first quarter so that you can get adjusted to what the pace is like, what the courses are like. And I was in a similar boat to Jackie where I definitely failed one of my first classes in my first quarter because I had no idea what I was expecting out of the quarter system. So it's something to ease yourself into, at least for the first quarter.
I have another question from the chat. It includes about waitlists and gold. It says, when exactly will we know if we have been added to a waitlisted classes, if there's an exact date?
So there is not an exact date. Different departments use waitlists in different ways. But typically how it goes, it's first come, first serve on the waitlist. So for example, if you're number like 36, you'll have a less chance of getting into the course than if you're number 1. And it kind of just goes rolling as students drop a course. That's when spaces are automatically made available. When you're in person, the process is sort of similar, but sort of different, because then you're encouraged to attend lectures, even if you're still waitlisting. But it sort of just depends. I know for the comm department, waitlists are done based on seniority. So if you're a senior, you get placed higher up. Sometimes you'll find yourself, you started on the wait list as number 7, and then more students add on and you end up at like number 20. And that just happens because the wait list is set differently. But if you were admitted into the course, you would get an email notification telling you that you've been put off the wait list and automatically added into a course.
Another question from the chat. The student says, I've gotten an email about student involvement fair through Zoom, which is what I'm doing, but what would you recommend for being more connected to UCSB from home as a first year?
I think that that's a really good first start. So for those folks who didn't get that email or aren't aware, UCSB is having a virtual involvement fair today and tomorrow, I believe. And so that's a good first start to getting to know some of the campus orgs that are happening, are still active as remote learning. Another way to get involved would also be to attend workshops and seminars or events held by other campus resources and centers. So I know that the ONDAS student centers will be having different events throughout the quarter, and I think it would be a good opportunity to also meet other first years, other first generation college students. And the same for Transfer Student Center. So the Transfer Student Center is an awesome space, and it's a sister center to us. And they host specific networking or like social events for transfer students. And I think that those are also really helpful and a cool way to get involved with campus and resources.
There's another question in the chat. How can we crash a course if everyone is on Zoom or Gaucho Space?
So the process of crashing courses looks very different on online. In my experience, it hasn't been the same, and sometimes professors encourage students not really to crash and wait until another quarter because it's harder for them to navigate kind of like which students are attending Zooms and to getting Zoom links to you. So it's been very different, and I don't know if Lori or Melipon want to add to that. I haven't had much experience crashing a course, and I would say that's very situational depending on what sort of course it is, if it's a GE or if it's like a pre-major class. GEs tend to have a lot more space than pre-major classes do.
Yes, and I would say if you are on the wait list, you're likely going to receive instructions from the professor or the TA on what crashing the course will look like, but likely it is a little bit more challenging if you're not already on the wait list.
There's another question in the chat. It's, do you recommend taking seminars for the first quarter?
Seminars, a quick follow-up question. Seminars in terms of like freshman seminars, because I know that UCSB offers freshman seminars and transfer seminars, and so those tend to be like 1 unit, 2 unit courses or pass, no pass, and they introduce you to student life. I took a freshman seminar. I took I think it was like intro to sports, and it was really cool, and it showed you all of like the adventurous things that you have on campus. So you can go kayaking on campus, and then you can use like the rec center and like all the cool things. Like we have a rock wall in person. So I had a really fun time in my freshman seminar, and because it wasn't really a course specifically, I thought it was easy to navigate in addition to my other courses, and it's also a fun way to meet other freshmen, other students there as well.
Oh, someone in the chat said, what does crashing a course mean?
So crashing a course means that you're on the wait list and you're trying to get into the class. And so you'll often hear that referred, oh, I'm crashing this class. And I'm not sure where the lingo came from, but it's crashing because you're not in the class, you're not enrolled, but you're on the wait list, or maybe you're not on the wait list, but you want to get into the class. And so when you're in person, it does look very different. So sometimes you'll attend a lecture in person and it seats like 400, but there's like 450 people like squished into a lecture. That's because students are trying to waitlist a class, or they're crashing it in hopes of getting in. And so the process looks different in person.
I have a few more questions, and we'll certainly try to get through as many as we can by 12:15. And if Jackie has to hop off because of your busy schedule. I'm happy to stay on to try and answer some of these questions as well. There is a question from a transfer student. If you're a new transfer student, do you think it's a good idea to start finding research projects during my first quarter, even though I haven't had much experience at my community college? Will it make my schedule more overwhelming? So I don't know if Jackie, you want to start with when you started getting involved in research projects, and then I can also answer and add on as well.
So research is one of the biggest experiences I've had during my undergrad, and I started by chance. Someone asked if I was interested in research assisting. In my head, I was like, nope, like why would I do that? Because I didn't really know what it was. But then I was like, yes, of course I'm interested. And now here I am with about like 2.5 years of research experience. I began during my second year, and I never, in terms of research and stuff, I never think it's too early to start. A lot of professors are doing incredible research in different topics and disciplines, and they're always looking for help. TAs are always looking for help, grad students who are doing their own research. I don't think that if you're really interested in pursuing research and doing that as a career or adding that as a supplement, I don't think that it's too early to start, especially as a transfer student. There are different resources available specifically for transfer students interested in doing research. I would recommend checking out URCA, the undergraduate research something. They offer a lot of resources, and this is general for also anyone else. If you're first year interested in doing research, that's a good place to start. They'll let you know the resources you have available and kind of pinpoint you in the direction if there's a certain way you want to go about it.
Yeah, and I'll certainly add to that for transfer students too. We do place a lot of emphasis on making sure that your first quarter is a smooth transition, right? Taking on, like Jackie said, being mindful of what you are capable of handling, right? What are you capable of balancing, especially as you're coming into a new, not just a new like quarter system and a new schedule, but a new culture and a new institution and a new set of policies and things to be mindful of. So, again, if you are doing your 12 units, you're doing your 3 classes, you know for sure that research is something that you are very much interested in getting involved in. You can look into the FRAP program, the Faculty Research Assistance Program. The URCA link is in the chat. If you look at the top toolbar, FRAP, F-R-A-P is one of the options. That's a good place to start if you're not sure what research is, why you would get involved in research, and you're not looking to build your own research projects just yet. You're just looking to become a research assistant, right? So helping a professor or helping a graduate student who is conducting research complete their research projects. So the FRAP directory is something that you can look through, and those are professors who are looking for research assistants, undergraduate research assistants. And then there's tabs on some of them that say like open to transfer students, right? They're looking to work with transfer students specifically. I think that's a great place to start. And there is a question of what is the purpose of research? And because this is a research university and an institution that's very much focused on having professors who are making new discoveries, right? Who are contributing to new academic knowledge. Like that is the purpose of research, is finding new discoveries, finding new answers, finding answers to questions that haven't been answered. And so that's like at the core of what UCSB is as a research university. So your professors, in addition to teaching, what they produce in terms of research is very important to their roles and their jobs as professors. And so and graduate students who are working to earn their master's or their PhD have to conduct research in order to get your PhD. And you have to finish a research project in order to get your PhD. So that's somebody had asked, what is the purpose of research? So that is the purpose of research, and being at a research institution means that professors and graduate students are looking to support undergraduate students who are interested in research, right? So that you learn what research is, you learn about what the opportunities are for getting involved in research, and hopefully, you know, some of you might want to become researchers yourselves, right? You might want to become professors, you might want to become folks who are producing this knowledge that is being shared with the world. And so that's kind of the really cool thing about being at a research university, is there's a lot of opportunities for undergraduate students to get involved in research. And it is important if you are interested in graduate school, if you're interested in earning a PhD, there are certain programs that would expect you to have some kind of research experience first. But again, as a transfer student, it's understandable that you might not be ready to start your first quarter. You know, and that's okay too, because you still have the year and you have the 2 years or 3 if you stay a little bit longer to get involved in research. And you know, full transparency too, like Jackie has been saying, I only did 1 quarter of academic research when I was an undergraduate student before applying to graduate school, because I didn't know what research was when I was an undergraduate student, even though I went to a research university. And I didn't know I was supposed to have been involved in research opportunities if I was interested in graduate school. And I was still able to get into my program, and I was still able to enter a master's and a PhD program, only having had 1 quarter of experience, right? So don't be too hard on yourself if that's something that you realize that you haven't gotten involved in yet. I have a question that maybe you can answer, Jackie, and Lori too. And I'm going to combine 2 questions. So if you find that you are struggling in your courses, like really struggling in your courses, how quickly would you be able to get help, and who would you contact to get help? And then if you have failed a course, what would you do about that?
So I have experience from this from straight out my first quarter at Ucsb. I was very fortunate in that I had a mentor who was sort of helping me navigate resources in a bit. But if you need help, it's kind of really easy to get help. The first place I went was academic advising. I went to the academic advisor in the College of Letters and Science, and I said, hello, I'm not doing well in this class. I don't think that I will do well. I'm not sure what to do. And so she gave me a few options. She said, well, this is a pre-major course. You need it to get into the major. You know, you have to get a letter grade and you have to pass. Do you think you'll be able to do that? And I said, and I was very honest. I was like, no, I don't think so. And also I had lost interest in taking that class. So I was like, and then she gave me a few options. I followed suit with what she told me. And then after discussing with her, I kind of decided that maybe I didn't want to start with the major that I was in or continue with the major I was in, because in addition to that 1 class, I still had many more classes that were similar to that to take. And so then I went to career services, and I saw career services and I said, hey, like, this is sort of the career I want to end up in, but I need to change my majors. Can you help me navigate this? And so the folks at career services were super helpful, and they said, you know, major doesn't always mean career. So here are a few majors that you may be interested in. Check them out, try them out. And so that's what I did. I tried 2 different majors, and then I ended up at comm, and so here I am. So I was able to get help pretty immediately. All of this happened within like the span of like a week, I think. So it was really quick, and I never thought that I would change my majors. I was like, no, I'm going to go in and I'm going to finish, and, you know, strong, I'm super passionate about this topic. And it didn't turn out that way. And I'm sort of glad it didn't. I have had a different experience. I was able to enjoy the comm major. I'm biased again, but I really like it. I really like the faculty. I really like the professional staff that work over the department. So I definitely think that there is help available. I would always recommend academic advising. Sometimes that style doesn't work for folks. So there's also advising available at ELP, and it's more culturally aware advising. So if that's something that you're interested in, I would also recommend that. And then career services was also helpful in navigating kind of where I want to take my undergrad experience and such.
And keep in mind that just because you fail a class, you know, it doesn't mean that you have to change your major, right? It's kind of part of the experience. And I failed one of my GE classes. It wasn't even a major class. It was a GE class that I needed. Actually, I failed a few classes in my undergraduate career, and it doesn't always affect your future, as you can see. So there was one class that I did retake. One was a GE that I was like, I'm just going to take another GE that I'm more interested in to fulfill that area. So I didn't really, and I took it pass no pass, which means I didn't take it for a letter grade, which means it didn't affect my GPA. And that was when I decided that I was like, I didn't like that enough to try and make that up. So I'm going to take another class to fulfill that GE area. But that was because I had entered as a first year out of high school. And then there was a calculus class that I failed and with a D-, and then I decided to take that one over for a better grade to replace what effect it had on my GPA. Again, so there are different options. Like Jackie said, make sure that you are speaking to an academic advisor about the best option for you, because pass no pass is a really useful option, but there's a lot of rules around pass no pass. So it's important to talk to an academic advisor about how it could affect your GPA or your academic trajectory. Because if you're interested in law school, a no pass is counted as an F, right? If they're calculating law school admissions, and that would have a significant impact on your GPA when law schools are looking at it. So that's why it's really important to ask for help when you are in those kinds of situations where you're not sure. And I completely agree with Jackie about changing your majors if you want to, you know, if you find that you're not happy with something or you're not interested in something, you don't have to stick with that. I was a bio major for one day and hated the classes that I was part of in my first week, and immediately changed to become undeclared. And then I became a sociology major and minored in education. And it's the path that I'm on now. And I'm incredibly happy with the decisions I made. So again, different options for you all to consider, but it is important to speak to academic advisors when you're in those kinds of situations.
Yeah, and another thing, I also switched my major like 5 times, so it's totally normal. It was actually kind of fun, like I popped classes in there. But there's another thing called CLAS, it's tutoring on campus. I went there, I'm a bio major, so I went there for my Chem 1 series, for the bio series. I'll put the link right there. They're very great. They're students tutoring the classes most of the time, and like they understand the struggle and everything, but it's a really good resource, and I would recommend using it if you have a course that is CLAS.
For CLAS, do we have to sign up October 1st, or can it be like any day after that?
Actually, Lori can answer that one.
Thanks. So the opening date for registration is October 1st, but you could sign up whenever throughout the quarter. But you do have to attend a certain amount. I can't remember right now. You do have to attend a certain amount of classes, or else you're dropped. But I mean, you could easily get re-registered again, so it's not like a strict thing. And there's like cool handouts and everything. But yeah, so the opening date is October 1st at noon. Yeah.
I have another question, and maybe Lori and Jackie could answer this. If the UCSB bookstore doesn't show any course materials for their class, does that mean that they don't have any required textbooks?
So in my experience, if a course is listed as having no materials for a class on the UCSB's bookstore, sometimes it means that the professor will upload textbook materials onto Ucsb, and so you don't have to buy a textbook. Sometimes the professor takes a while to upload course information. So if you need a textbook, sometimes it takes them a minute before they upload that. Sometimes it means that the textbook will only be available through like a certain software or like online through like a link. And so your professor will let you know in the coming weeks as we enter the school year.
Yes, and I agree with that, Jackie, is not every professor might be listing their books in the UCSB campus bookstore site because they're not sure if you're able to access those materials. So keep in mind, like Jackie said, your Gaucho space and your syllabus will give you very clear instructions on what your course materials are. It might not always be textbooks because sometimes you would be assigned research articles, scholarly articles, research articles, other things that would be a PDF or would be a link that is in your syllabus or your Gaucho space. So again, those are things to look out for, is I think professors are trying to be really mindful of the fact that because we are remote, not everybody is going to have a textbook that you all have to purchase. It might just be research articles or PDFs or other alternative forms of readings that you would be doing that's not a textbook. So it doesn't mean that you don't have course materials, because most likely you will absolutely have course assignments and readings to do. Jackie, can you add, and Lori, these are kind of technical questions, and I kind of answered it, but if you are given an add code, like you didn't just add the class on Gold while it was open, but if you are given an add code, what do you do with an add code?
So for an add code, how it works is that you would, on Gold, you would log into Gold, and you would go into the Find Course section, and then look for the course that the add code belongs to. And so you'll just click add, and then it'll say, if you have an add code, it means either the professor gave you an extra spot in the course, or that the course requires an add code to be for you to be, like, have a spot in it. And so when you put add, it'll give you the option like, oh, insert add code, and then that's where you would put the add code, and then you would add it, and then it would appear on your schedule.
I've never used add code actually, so I'm not aware. But thank you, Jackie.
I think please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm almost sure that I'm covering all of the questions that have come into me through private chat. Actually, there's one more. Now that we are remote, will our access card be needed or required? That is a fantastic question. Typically, your access card is needed to enter buildings, to go to events, to use the bus. I think if you are remote, if you're living from home or far away, you may not likely need to purchase your access card just yet, but there are options to purchase your access card and have it mailed to you. What is important is that you know your student ID number, which is also known as your PERM number here, your PERM. So that's probably one that you should work on memorizing, because it's really the PERM number, and you saw we asked for it on the sign-in link for this event. You're going to be asked for your PERM number over and over and over again. So it is important that you know your student ID number, because that is what's important. And we can put in a link to the chat about where you could get your access card. It does cost $30, I believe, right, Jackie and Lori? Especially because it's one that you can enter buildings in. It's one that you can use to put money on if you were to purchase anything on the campus bookstore or the Arbor. And it's also how you would use the bus system around Santa Barbara, as well as through your access card. Any other questions? I recognize that we are about 15 minutes over time. So absolutely thank Jackie and Lori for staying a little bit extra, and all of you for joining us. And yes, if you purchase your student ID card, it is the one that you will use for all 4 years. It is the same photo you will use for all 4 years, unless you lose it, which folks have done. But then it means you have to buy another one. So try not to lose it, because you don't want to spend another $30 for a piece of plastic. They use the same photo for all 4 years. Or if you're me, they use the photo for my undergrad as well for graduate school. So you're kind of stuck with the photo you have, just like your driver's license. Okay. Okay, well, those were all the questions we saw. Hopefully we answered everybody's questions who came in through the chat, or we answered them out loud. Hopefully we'll see some of you tomorrow in the first gen chat rooms that we have throughout the afternoon with our faculty, our staff and leaders, our students. We have a specific transfer student section as well, and then our alumni and graduate students. You can get a sense of what their research is, what they do as graduate students, and then some of our alumni who are doing awesome things after leaving UCSB, either as students who came in right after high school or some of our transfer student alumni as well. And then all of our workshops that are being hosted on Wednesday are going to be really fun as well. But thank you everybody for joining us for the very first Gen Scholars Welcome session. An amazing job to Jackie for putting together this presentation for us all, and Lori for hosting behind the background with me. So they are really awesome, and we are really excited to meet all of you, and thank you for joining us today. And let us know if you have any questions, email us. We are happy to help you.